At the beginning of the film, we see our protagonist, Sophia Worthy, a television show producer, doing her morning routine. She receives a text from her boss about a failed story pitch. She arrives at the office and meets her friend Lindsay, the person who helped her get a position at the agency. They briefly talk about some issues on the show that Sophia is working on. Her friend gives her some encouraging words, stating how smart and capable she is. However, Lindsay somehow squeezes in the topic of Sophia's ex-boyfriend, who cheated on her. When Sophia meets her boss, Paul, he tells her how the group they were supposed to cover got busted by the cops for illegal prostitution. Sophia points out that she wasn't comfortable doing a show on the Sexy Santa Society. She thinks doing a show on them is a bit exploitative. Moving on to another topic, Paul suggests that Sophia interview a guy called Will Saunders. He's a guy who celebrates Christmas Day every single day of the year. There's not a lot of information on him online, aside from the fact that he is 33 years old and has a background in carpentry and scenic design. Paul gives Sophia Will's phone number and gives her one day to convince the man to go on their show, called Extreme Holidays. He also reminds her that her entire career as a producer is dependent on the show. Before calling Will, Sophia tries looking him up online, but he has no social media presence at all. She dials his number and introduces herself. He immediately turns down the offer. Sophia mentions shedding light on the charity organizations that will help, and this changes his mind. They set up a meeting the next day. One day later, Sophia walks into a coffee shop and hilariously introduces herself to the wrong person. Eventually, she sees the real Will and sits with him. He offers to buy her a coffee, and she recites a very specific order. Surprisingly, Will remembers the details and makes the correct order. After getting the orders, he gives Sophia a box of macarons. At this point, Will is giving off a flirty vibe, based on the way he looks at Sophia. When the conversation finally gets to the TV show, Will admits that being on it is not something he wishes to do. Once again, Sophia brings up the charity angle as a way to convince Will. However, he sees through her and asks her what she's going to get out of including him in the show. Sophia comes clean and reveals that her career is on the line, and that Will is her last hope of getting the show produced and aired. This confession surprises Will. However, Sophia is not entirely honest, since after a while, she lies about being a Christmas enthusiast, and how seeing Will's house would make her dream come true. At the end of the conversation, they both agree that Will mulls it over, and she'll get his answer by the end of the day. When Sophia arrives back at the entertainment agency, she tells Paul about the encounter. She states that he didn't expect Will to be a normal guy, and she also mentions how hot he is. At 4:45, Sophia can't wait any longer and dials Will. He doesn't give her a straight answer and instead invites her to his home. Moments later, we see Sophia arriving in front of a large, modern house. Will greets her at the door and shows her his senior dog, Romeo. Upon entering the house, Sophia sees Christmas decorations all over the place. While showing her around, Will points out the mistletoe and tells her not to mind them. Perhaps this is another subtle flirting tactic. Like any good producer, Sophia asks how Will started obsessing over Christmas decorations. He then tells her how at one point, he was working on a Christmas movie that ran out of money. Instead of a wage, they paid him tons of Christmas decorations. He didn't know what to do with them, so he made them a permanent part of his home. The two move to a different room with a unique theme. Will calls it Christmas Under the Sea. She notices a painting of a mermaid, and Will jokes about it being his cousin Ariel. When Sophia asks how long he has owned the house, Will shares that he inherited it from his grandparents. According to him, he had to take apart most of the house and redesign it to make it look modern. This is also when we find out that Will's parents are no longer around. He also mentions that his grandparents were big Christmas fans, and they are part of his inspiration for doing what he did to his house. Out of nowhere, Will suddenly ask Sophia who her favorite ornament manufacturer is, to see if she really is crazy for Christmas, as she claims. Sophia is stunned, and tries to save face by giving a generic answer. Will knows she's just making an excuse, but he plays along. Next, they arrive at a room with a miniature train set. It's a room that Will works on most of the time, since his collection of decorations keeps growing. Suddenly, a man named Hank appears from under the table, and he gets introduced to Sophia as Will's right-hand man. Sophia later finds out that he is a homeless person that Will hires from time to time. The house tour ends, and Sophia expresses how excited she is to film the show, if Will accepts her offer. Will is still hesitant, since he fears that the show might paint him as a crazy person. Sophia reassures him that they won't do him dirty, since she has a background in documentary making. This implies that her works are centered on delivering the truth. Will finally agrees, after Sophia mentions that her production team is willing to donate to a charity of his choice. Although judging by how he looks at Sophia, it's quite possible that he agreed to the deal because he likes her. The next day, Sophia and the rest of the production team arrive at Will's home. Funny enough, two of the crew members, Lindsay and Kayla, are stunned by how hot Will is. When the crew enters Will's house, they immediately start making comments about the difficulty of shooting based on the wall colors, and one of them even pokes at the decorations. Will tries to hide his discomfort regarding the situation, but Sophia quickly reassures him that his house is in good hands. Her comment is enough to calm him down. After the production crew finishes inspecting the house, they set a schedule for the first shooting day, which is Monday. Will thinks that isn't a good time, since he still needs to finish decorating the house. Sophia senses tension between him and her colleagues, so she stays behind to talk to Will. At this point, Will's grumpy neighbor stops by and asks what the commotion is all about. When Will tells him about the show, Fred asks if he will be compensated for the inconvenience. As expected from a grumpy old man, he promptly leaves after Sophia gives him an answer. Will invites Sophia back inside the house. He asks her if he can still back out, since he is having second thoughts. He thinks that he jumped at the opportunity too quickly. He points out that he has a certain way of sharing the Christmas spirit, one that is very different from the style of a reality TV show. Sophie responds by telling him that despite the show being a disruption to his nice, cozy life, it's something that he won't regret. Seconds later, somehow, Sophia loses her grip and drops her documents. This creates the classic scene where they both try to pick it up, but end up staring into each other's eyes instead. Flustered, Sophia leaves the house with Will and takes an Uber ride home. In the next scene, we see Hank and Will putting out some decorations to get the house ready for the show. They briefly talk about some of the charity organizations they'd like to mention on the show, one of which is Hank's homeless shelter. Hank makes a joke about Will putting Sophia on his wish list, which basically confirms that she was indeed one of the reasons that he accepted the deal. The next day, the production crew arrives at Will's house, and this time, Paul is with them. When Sophia introduces her boss to Will, he is too busy admiring her to pay attention to Paul. After the introductions, Sophia talks to Will in private and tells him about how the first day of shooting is going to go. She also reassures him that if anything goes wrong, it will be fixed in post-production. After that, Will gives her a list of the charity organizations he'd like to be mentioned in the show. While Will is getting his makeup done, Paul arrives to make him choose between the two shirts that he'll wear. He protests that he didn't agree to wear a costume. Despite this, Paul insists that he needs to wear one for the opening shot. He only agrees to change his outfit after Sophia convinces him to do so. In the next scene, we see Will at the front door, while Paul is explaining the shot, and Sophia tells him his line. Will delivers his line 3 times in a very unsatisfactory way. He is clearly annoyed by the producers requiring him to fake his enthusiasm. Sophia makes Will change his shirt back to his usual one. While doing so, everyone gawks at Will's chiseled body. After that, he finally delivers his line to the producer's satisfaction. The crew moves the filming session inside the house, and they ask him a few questions relating to his house. It starts out tame, but then Paul suddenly starts asking questions relating to Will's love life. He thinks it's a fun detail to include in the show. Obviously, Will thinks such questions are inappropriate, so he walks out of the room before he loses his temper. Sophia quickly goes to where Will is to make sure he's okay. He explains to her that he takes his Christmas hobby very seriously, so he only wants to portray what feels right for him. Sophia reassures him that she understands, so she suggests ignoring Paul's questions and just saying whatever he wants. Other guys would probably be upset for longer, but since Will really likes Sophia, he listens to her advice, and they go back to finish shooting. During a short break, we see Lindsay and Sophia discussing how great of a guy Will is. Lindsay suddenly starts insinuating that Will has a thing for Sophia, based on the way he looks at her. Sophia reassures her friend that she's not going to get romantically involved with him, likely because of her prejudice towards attractive men. At the end of the conversation, Lindsay points out that not every hot guy is going to break Sophia's heart the way that her ex did. After the filming, Sophia and Will talk about how the experience wasn't as bad as Will thought it would be. He agrees and invites her for dinner. Sophia wants to accept, but decides to decline the offer due to professional and personal reasons. The personal reason being she doesn't want to risk her heart being broken again. Despite declining the offer for dinner, Will still shows up in front of Sophia's apartment. He gives her a bouquet of irises and invites himself in. Will starts apologizing for being a grouch earlier, and then he clarifies that, unlike what Paul implied, he is not a player. As the conversation continues, Will starts flirting hard, until he and Sophia eventually start kissing on the couch. The makeout sessions last for quite a while, until somehow Sophia miraculously musters the strength to stop and kick Will out of her apartment. Now that's some superb self-restraint right there. The next day, the filming continues. This time, Will is being filmed inside the room containing the miniature train. While Will is answering some questions regarding the train set, Paul and Lindsay are at the back whispering, talking about how Will has more personality than they expected. Next, they move to the room with the underwater theme. Paul points out that the room seems more feminine, unlike Will. This is when Will reveals that his ex-girlfriend was a big fan of mermaids, and she was the inspiration for the design of the room. Paul then starts asking a more personal question, implying that such a room might be used for sexy time. Surprisingly, Will gives a wholesome response, saying that any room can be special if you are with the right person. During a short break, Will and Sophia meet up and talk about how he masterfully managed Paul's intrusive questions. Seconds later, he shows her a room full of decorations that he plans to put outside of his house. One decoration that stands out is a gingerbread house. According to Will, it's a gift from his parents before they passed. He and his grandfather had been adding decorations to it throughout the years, so he wants it to be seen in the show at some point. Sophia promises that they'll find a way to make that happen. At this point, their private conversations can't be complete without a full-on makeout session. Just like the first time they made out, this lasts for a while, until Sophia hears Lindsay calling her. Sophia rushes outside and bumps into Lindsay. She tells her that she was in the garage, looking at the other decorations. When Lindsay asks why she's speaking so fast, Sophia just tells her that it's due to the coffee she drank. Lindsay doesn't pry any further, and they continue their day. At the start of the following day, we see Will having a short and unpleasant exchange with his grumpy neighbor, Fred. Moments later, Sophia arrives and gives Will a t-shirt that she picked out for him. He immediately wears it, giving everyone around him a short glimpse of his majestic body. Moments later, we see Paul interviewing a few of Will's neighbors, asking them how they feel about his hobby. Most of them give weird answers, while Fred straight up tells them that he hates it. After that, we see Will and everyone else in front of his house having a great time with synthetic snow. Everyone is feeling the Christmas vibes. After the filming is done for the day, Will invites Sophia to stay at his house. He offers to cook some food for her, which Sophia finds impressive. While preparing a meal, Sophia asks Will about his past relationships. He admits that he had a few, including an engagement that didn't work out. He returns the question back to Sophia, and she reveals that she was cheated on during her last relationship. Out of the blue, Sophia asks how Will lost his parents. She finds out that Will is an only child, who lost his parents to a car accident when he was just a kid. She feels sorry for him, but Will points out that such tragedies are part of life, and that everyone experiences something similar. This is when he takes the time to talk about his past life, and how he used to be a problematic teenager. Fortunately, even when he got kicked out by his grandparents, they eventually gave him a second chance and took him back. Since then, he has changed for the better. At one point in the conversation, Sophia admits that she is not the Christmas enthusiast that she told him she was. She explains that her divorced parents always competed with each other regarding who could give her a better Christmas day. This is why she grew up with a tainted perspective toward the holiday. Will looks at her intently and suggests that perhaps this year's Christmas day will feel different. Once again, the two lovebirds can't contain their passion and start making out. This time the scene gets steamier, as Will and Sophia take off each other's clothes one piece at a time. Will takes her to his room, and we all can guess what happens after that. On the next filming day, we see Will climbing a ladder. Sophia arrives and tells her coworkers that they shouldn't be letting him do that. Will purposefully falls off the ladder, but lands on a safety cushion. Everyone cheers except for Sophia, who becomes more agitated by the second. After failing to argue with Paul, Lindsay pulls her aside to ask her why she's behaving that way. This is when Lindsay realizes that Sophia is agitated due to a different reason. Even when Sophia doesn't reply, Lindsay immediately understands that something happened between her coworker and the Christmas hunk. Lindsay is happy that her friend is finally getting some action, especially from someone like Will. However, she also tells Sophia to keep it discreet, since it will be bad for Sophia's career if the boss finds out. Later that night, Will finally flips the switch that lights up his entire house. Everyone is amazed by how it looks. After the filming ends, Will asks Sophia to stay at his house again. Unfortunately, Sophia rejects his offer since she's busy that night. Instead, the two agree to go on a date a few days later to pick out some Christmas trees. Fast forward to the date, we see Sophia and Will walking along the pathway of an assortment of trees, ready to be bought and decorated. Sophia picks one out, and then starts making innuendos about how Will is just as sturdy as the tree. Of course, it ends in another kissing session. Seconds later, the scene transitions to the pair inside Sophia's apartment. They finish decorating the tree and start slow dancing. This is when Will confesses that he has fallen in love with Sophia. As expected, they kiss and make love. And we fast forward to them both lying in bed. Will invites Sophia for a morning hike, but she points out that she still needs to keep their relationship a secret for now. They agree to stay in instead. The next filming day goes without a hitch. We see Will spending time with the children and sharing the Christmas spirit. Then, the scene shifts to the editing room at the entertainment agency. Paul praises Sophia for her hard work in making Will open up. However, he points out that the show still needs more drama and conflict. Sophia doesn't like what her boss is suggesting, but she has no choice but to comply. Later that night, the filming continues, and Will is being interviewed about his house. While talking about his gingerbread house, the boom operator Kayla is getting the mic in the shot, so Sophia asks her to back up. Disaster strikes next, as Kayla trips and leans on the gingerbread house, breaking its roof. The camera continues rolling, and Will tries to play it cool, despite obviously feeling distressed. Will goes back inside his house to cool off. Sophia follows him and apologizes for what happened. Will was more annoyed, and understandably so, about the fact that Sophia kept the cameras rolling after what happened. Knowing that saying more would make the situation worse, Sophia leaves. Back in the editing room, Paul is reviewing the clips on the computer when he suddenly spots some CCTV footage of Sophia and Will kissing. Sophia then receives a message from Paul while she's talking to Lindsay. The message contains the footage that he saw in the editing room. She's screwed. Later, we see Will and Sophia talking about how to handle what happened. Sophia promises that she won't break up with him over the issue, since she is a master of multitasking. Still, she points out that she has a show to produce, and she has to stay focused on it. Will responds by showering her with compliments. Surprisingly, this time their conversation ends with a few pecks, instead of a full-on makeout session. The next day, Paul asks Sophia to contact a psychiatrist. She thinks he is telling her to talk to one, but he clarifies that it's for the show. Paul wants to paint a malicious angle and make it look like something is wrong in Will's head. Sophia knows she can't protest, especially since her boss knows about her secret relationship, so she complies. The scene cuts to an interview with the psychiatrist, and how it can also negatively affect people at times. When Sophia asks her what she says about people who celebrate Christmas every day, the psychiatrist responds with 2 words: dysfunction junction. With a heavy heart, Sophia ends the interview there. On a different day, Will asks about how the show is coming along while on a date with Sophia. She lies, telling him that he is looking like a star, despite not knowing what the outcome will be. All of a sudden, Will receives a text from a friend telling him that the trailer for the show is out. They watch the video together, and just as Sophia fears, the trailer is a total misrepresentation of Will's character. It made him look like a crazy person. The next day, Sophia charges into Paul's office, fuming. The 2 producers start arguing about the nature of the show. Sophia is tempted to quit, but Paul urges her to stay by telling her that she has an opportunity to edit the show in a way that will make it great. The scene quickly shifts to Will and Sophia arguing. Sophia promises to make things right and represent the show how it should be. However, Will doesn't believe her anymore. When Sophia asks him why he agreed to go on the show in the first place, he admits that she was the reason. Will believes that Sophia saw something in him that he didn't. Despite Sophia wanting to remain in a relationship with Will, he doesn't think the same way, and they break up. Back at the office, Lindsay tries to comfort Sophia by pointing out that Will has some red flags, and that their relationship was never going to last. Sophia doesn't believe her and she defends him, telling her about all Will's good side. She wishes that things could have worked out better. A few days later, we see Will and Hank trying to fix the broken gingerbread house. Sophia comes up in the conversation. Hank reminds him that people can make mistakes, but they can also learn from them and change. Moments later, Will sees Fred having trouble with his mailbox. He goes over there to offer help. Fred softens up and admits that he just realized that Will was doing something good after the filming ended. The old man mentions how a deceased relative of his would mention how nice the inside of Will's house looked. Will offers to show Fred, and the old man agrees. Meanwhile, in the editing room, Paul and Sophia are editing an episode of the show. They start arguing again about what clips to include. Then Paul suddenly starts gaslighting Sophia, pretending that he cares for her and wants her to succeed. In reality, he just wants her to edit the show how he wants it. In the following scenes, we see Will and Sophia doing their own thing in their respective places. When Sophia sees the Christmas tree that Will picked out for her, she tries texting him to join her at an office party, but decides not to send it. Sophia attends the office party, although she doesn't look like she is having any fun at all. Meanwhile, we see Will on the same night, taking a stroll and looking at decoration stores while deep in thought. One morning, Sophia bumps into Will after getting her morning coffee. They greet each other awkwardly and talk about how things have been going. Sophia tells him that the show is coming along great, while Will shares that his gingerbread house is finally fixed. After a long awkward pause, they greet each other Merry Christmas and head separate ways. In the next scene, we see Sophia doing her best in the editing room to make sure the show is getting cut to her liking. However, all of a sudden, Paul informs her that their clients want to see a rough draft of the show in 2 hours. This catches Sophia off guard, and she tries to convince Paul to not go through with the viewing. But he insists they proceed, or they will lose the deal. The scene cuts to the meeting, where Paul and Sophia are describing the show Extreme Holidays to their clients, and what it aims to deliver. When Sophia plays the video, Paul is surprised to see that it's cut in a way that makes Will look righteous and wholesome. After the video ends, one of the clients points out that the show looks very different from how the promo was cut. Paul tries to explain at first, but he lets Sophia talk, hoping that she'll take the blame for their client's dissatisfaction. However, unexpectedly, the clients tell them that they love how the show goes on a different path. They admit that the initial tone of the promo is unsustainable, and that Sophia's vision for the show is more fitting. Without saying anything more, the clients approve the show and take their leave. On their way back to their office, Paul comments about what transpired in the meeting room, but doesn't make a big deal of it any further. He starts talking about their next project on Valentine's Day, but Sophia stops him. In another surprising turn of events, Sophia tells Paul that she is quitting her job, stating that reality TV is not something that fits her ideals, then walks away. After quitting her job, Sophia goes to Will's home and slips a letter through the front door. When Will arrives, he sees the letter and reads about how much Sophia respects him, and how she wants to gain his respect too. Attached to the letter is a flash drive that contains the final cut of the show, and he sees that, in the end, Sophia fulfilled her promise to portray him accurately. Later that night, Will arrives at Sophia's apartment with a bouquet of irises. The first thing she asks him is whether he watched the show. Will puts her at ease, telling her that he understands what she is trying to do, and that he's thankful for defying her boss's expectations. This is also when she admits that she quit her job, because she wants to do more fulfilling work. Despite not being sure if she did the right thing, Sophia is sure about her feelings for Will. He is glad that they can finally focus on their relationship without the show coming in between them. With everything clarified, they make up, make out, and get back together.